Let's turn our attention inward and explore the thoughts and emotions that shape our experiences and discover how to live with more awareness and intention. I'm David Dawson, and this is Interaction. Yours is actually really good.
Wow.
It's very Picasso. Your forehead and head is just massive. Oh, man.
Well, your ear is on your cheek.
Great job for that first time.
That was kind of fun. I'll do
All
that
right,
with
and
my
I can take that
4-year-old.
for you. Okay. Sariah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Today is going to be a really sensitive topic, personally for me too, because I have experience in this, being a betrayer. And also when you came in for a haircut about 6 to 8 weeks ago and you started to tell me what you did, I'm like, oh, I have to have you on because this is such an amazing topic that I think many people can find themselves in some way, shape, or form, and they feel trapped. They don't really know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to do just a quick introduction, and then we're going to dive right into all of the details here. So, Sariah Bastian, you are a yoga therapist and a neurosomatic coach, and you help women heal emotionally after infidelity.
Correct.
You've developed the Empower Her method, a blend of yoga therapy, neuroscience, and nervous system regulation to support rebuilding trust and finding peace without fixating on others' actions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I've got the first question here. I usually will start off with, what's your current relationship with yourself, but I'm just going to skip right over that because I want to know, what does infidelity mean to you?
That's a really good question. And I think that if you were to look at Webster's dictionary and see what cheating even is, their definition, I think, is having a sexual encounter with another person. When I think about infidelity or the word cheating, which is often related to it, connected to it, for me, it's an energetic cheat. So when I got married to my husband, I vowed to him that I would give him my whole self, that I would honor myself in the way that I needed to in order to give my energy, my thoughts, my attention, my love to him. And when we look at cheating in these days, you can say like, well, he just looks at pornography, or he just had an emotional affair with somebody at work, or he was just texting somebody, on a dating app, or he just had, sex, a one night stand. But there's a lot that goes on with that, behind that, and that the thoughts that went to the other woman, the energy that was taken to hold the secret, to, the figuring out of your schedule of how you were going to respond. All of that is cheating your spouse of the wholeness that you promised them. So in marriage, in our society, it's, when you get married, two become one, and it just sounds so Disney perfect, right? But that doesn't work, because then I'm responsible for your happiness, or you're responsible for my happiness. And that's what we base a marriage off of. If you're making me happy, instead of me committing to being a whole individual on my own. And then the benefit of that is you get to benefit from my wholeness instead of me expecting you to make me whole.
What? Okay, so when I got married really young, and I've made lots and lots of mistakes, discoveries.
I don't like mistakes.
Yeah,
You're just learning.
discoveries. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew what wholeness meant
Mm-hmm.
and what that would look like. And as I'm getting older and realizing more and more what I'm stitching that together, but I've got a long way to go,
Mm-hmm.
especially with just old habits and things that are coming together. So how could, because you work specifically with women, how would you suggest they find their wholeness to begin with?
I think it starts with recognizing where you are in life, your outputs, your actions, your behaviors, where you're putting your energy. Um, I I don't think anybody is ever whole, and I love God. Uh, and I think Gwyneth, I can't remember what her name is, but she wrote the book Carry On Warrior. She said you're whole with holes, and God fills in the holes. And
Mm.
I totally love that visual. It's so perfect for me. Um, but when we're upset about a relationship maybe not going the way that we wanted it to, or we're upset that our partner isn't doing what we think that they should be doing in order for our happiness, the wholeness aspect like turns that full length mirror to you. And how are you acting? How are you behaving? What are you doing to enhance your relationship with yourself? Because if we base love, the ability to love, the capacity to love, compassion, the ability to have compassion, or the capacity for compassion, it starts with the capacity that you have within yourself. And we're always looking for other people to give me compassion or give me the love that I need. And yet we don't have that within ourselves. And so as our capacity grows for love, for compassion, for, um, kindness, uh, it increases our ability to be able to have that within another relationship with another person. Because if not, there's usually something that's like blocking what might be offered if you don't believe that you're worth it, or can offer that to yourself first.
Yeah. So this topic is really quite specific and niche. How did you end up in this very specific role?
Well, nobody goes to school thinking, I'm going to help women who have been cheated on in their marriage. I experienced this myself. And I was also young when I got married for the first time and thought, he just doesn't love me the way that I need to be loved. And so went to another man and to another man and just kept the same patterns, um, with different men, same relationship. And not saying like I was bad or there was anything wrong with me, but my belief of who I was, the love that I had for myself, was to the capacity in which I was able to find love in relationships. And I was always the one that was holding up the neon sign. I always say, like, I'm holding up the neon sign, like, please love me. I promise I'll be good enough for you. I'll cook for you. I'll have sex with you. I'll clean. I'm a good wife. I'm a good mother. Like, proving myself through output of why you should love me, why you should care for me, why you should be nice to me. And I carried that belief and thought, like, if I just tried harder, if I just did more, maybe he'll accept me. Maybe he'll be nice to me. Maybe he'll love me. And uh, I got into a relationship and married a man after leaving a relationship where he didn't want to try. I felt like he didn't want to try. I felt like he didn't want to do the things that I wanted him to do to make our lives better and our marriage better. And I ended up in a relationship where uh, my belief of myself was so low, and I just kept proving myself, trying to prove myself over and over and over to convince him that I was good enough, or to convince him to be kind to me. And with that came pornography addiction that I didn't know about prior to marrying him. However, there are a lot of red flags that I saw, but I didn't trust myself enough to believe. I had a fear that nobody else would love me. This is my past. Look at how I'll be lucky if anybody does type of belief system within myself. And, online relationships, a lot of secrets, a lot of manipulation and gaslighting. And again, like,
This is him.
this is him.
Okay.
But also, I was manipulating and gaslighting myself. I've had to take full responsibility for the fact that I swallowed my words, that I didn't trust my gut, that I believed him over me, and convinced myself that I was crazy, or thought that, if I just tried harder, things would be fine. And so, upon leaving that relationship after years of individual therapy, reading every book I could get my hands on the subject, trying to convince him that I was worthy of fighting for. I listened to, calm music in the car. I just, my whole life, talk about my energy was like consumed in trying to repair this and to create the relationship that I really wanted. And nothing was working as far as like my ability to make a clear decision or to um, soften the anxiety or to stop ruminating or stop looking at his phone. And at the time, I was also taking my yoga therapy certification for the first time. And while I was in session in class, supposed to be learning, I was thinking about what he was doing at home, where he was, who he was talking to, thinking about how I could get home as fast as I could so that he wouldn't do anything. Maybe I could stop him before he stepped into something that he shouldn't. And as much as I learned there, I needed to learn what I was available to learn. I started implementing just some of the things that were connecting, like feeling my feet on the ground, like being aware of my body. And I'd been teaching yoga already for, let's see, probably 8 years at this point. So I was teaching yoga, but this was different as far as like learning the psychology of yoga. And so I started implementing some of the things I was learning in my yoga therapy certification. And I started like seeing things differently, like, oh, interesting, there's a hole in the wall where he threw his phone because he got mad that I found that he was talking to another woman. Or, oh, interesting, the ottoman is turned over because he just kicked it, because he's mad at me for, you know, being unhappy that he's talking to other women. Oh, that's so interesting. And I started kind of shifting my perspective on an unconscious level to just kind of like a witness, like I'm an observer of my life. And it was the gentleness of that that I started waking up to myself. And I remember telling him one time, just so you know, I'm getting stronger physically, mentally, and spiritually, just so you know. And it was my own strength and healing on what I knew that I was doing at the time that my body shakes when I tell the story, because it kind of brings it back. But that got me out of that relationship, and it wasn't what I wanted. Right? I didn't want another divorce, and I didn't want to put my boys through it, and I wanted to be loved. But for the first time ever, I started loving myself, and I still had a long way to go. So from 2014, I started working in a therapeutic center. It's so interesting because they called me. They'd heard about the education that I had received in my yoga therapy, and they said, "This is so weird, but we work in this situation, working with betrayal, trauma, and sexual addiction." And I was like, I just went through that. I totally know what these women are going through.
Yeah, you have the compassion and all
The
that.
everything from the inside and the thoughts and that they were going through. And so I started working there, and I created my program there, and at the same time was implementing the tools that I was creating in my own dating life. And from 2014 to 2018, I just dated, and I practiced saying no. And I recognize, like, but what if he stops loving me? Or what if I don't give him what he wants? He might leave. And that fear of abandonment that I had in my nervous system. And I just had to keep choosing myself. And so I've been able to use the tools for my own life, but then in the interim, be able to help at this point thousands of women worldwide also come back to themselves. And I'll finish with this because that was a long tangent, but
No,
I
no,
love the
you're
word
great.
recovery because it means regaining ownership of that which you have lost or left behind.
Mm, yeah, I do too. That's
And
great.
it's such a beautiful word when you say like recovery of what? Well, myself. Like I needed to regain ownership and possession of myself that I left behind, that I abandoned, that I self betrayed, and become whole
Hmm.
within myself.
Thank you for sharing that. I was curious because, you know, talking to people every day and asking pretty penetrating questions and whatnot. And how, one of the things I've realized is a lot of us do struggle with loving ourselves,
Hmm.
and whether or not that they're taking the angle because, well, I don't want to be conceited,
Selfish. Yeah.
selfish.
Hmm.
Well, I don't want to have a big head or whatever about,
Hmm.
like these things. But the more I'm realizing is like the more I can start to tap into that a little bit, just, and it's a little bit right now, it's still not a lot.
Hmm.
I can show up so much better
Hmm.
to those around me and to clients and whatnot. How was there something that you did that you felt like was uh, gaining that love for yourself in those early stages where you're finally realizing like, ooh, okay, I'm worth it. I don't need to
Mm.
be doing these patterns.
I um I don't know if there was any one particular thing. I think, and this is what I work with my clients, the very first thing that I have them do is play a game with themselves and say, how many times during the day can you be aware of the fact that you're aware of yourself? And it all started with an awareness of myself, of exactly where I was and the way that I was behaving and the way that I was showing up in relationships. And by recognizing how I was walking on eggshells or trying to prove myself to somebody in order to be loved, and recognizing through that awareness piece, like how that left me feeling. Um, what what the outcome of that was me feeling more lost, or me feeling resentful, or me feeling angry and impatient.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be that person. And so sometimes it was like, I can't do that. And that was out of love for them, because I would be dishonoring them by doing something that didn't come from my heart, that I didn't have the energy for, just to make them happy. If it was going to leave me depleted, because then they don't benefit from my whole self.
How important is communication in this?
Communication with your partner.
Well, I would say first with
Yeah.
yourself, but then also to be able to communicate to your partner where you're at too.
It has to start with yourself. And that's something that I work with these women. Like, they're like, well, he won't listen to me, or he doesn't validate me, or he doesn't hear the pain that I'm in. And I'm like, I hear that you want him to, but you're not hearing yourself. And that has to be the first part of communication. Is number one, we have to work with when we get into the neurosomatics, my hair keeps sticking to the microphone. We work with compassion, so acknowledgement, and then compassion, in that um, the statements of like, of course I'm feeling this way, and this is offered to yourself, like, oh, interesting, I am struggling with ruminating about you know what he did with this woman. Um, and I have a desire to go text him and make sure that he's not doing anything. Right. So you recognize like where you are on that tangible level. And then you say, of course Of course, I would be having those feelings. Of course, I would be having those emotions right now and that desire right now. When we step into that of course place and we offer that compassion, it turns on a part of our brain called the interior insula, and it's the part of your brain that allows for you to be able to start to get into your body, to detect the senses that your body is sharing with you, which is the communication piece that we're always missing. Like we go into conversations with our partner and we're like, I need you to fix me. I'm not happy. Or, you're making me angry. But that's all we have to give. We don't go to them and tell them like what it is that we're struggling with because we don't even know. We haven't even taken the time or the attention to be able to see if we can validate or reassure ourselves. We just go to our partner and say, you have to fix me. I'm not happy. Right? Going back to the culture of let's get married and your job is to make me happy, my job is to make you happy, and then we'll be fine. Right?
Yeah, that seems very uh, unempowered.
You
Like you're just completely powerless
at the whim
to,
of you.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, and then again, going back to like, if he's not making me happy, I need to be better so that he can try to make me happy, all with like an attempt of trying to control something that you have no control over,
Hmm.
right? So I'll get back to communication. So when we can turn on the part of our brain that allows for us to receive information into our body, to explore the sensations that are actually taking place that are giving us a lot of communication. Like it's really hard for me to breathe. I'll say right now, like my legs are jittery just sitting here. I'm a little bit cold, but also I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm very aware of that within my own body. Um, when we can start to like recognize that, then you can say, like, I see you, I hear you. Of course, this is a gentle topic, right?
Hmm.
Of course that they would be shaking. Again, going into that compassion. I see you, I hear you, I'm here. I am here with you. When we look at communication, then we can go into our relationships and say, I just wanted to share with you what I've been experiencing,
Oh, that's good. I like that.
right? Instead of like, you did this, you did that. I need you to fix this so that I can be okay. You're not going in with a need of anything, just a desire to be closer and to share your humanness with him or her in a way that doesn't leave you responsible for my emotional stability, but leaves you in a place of like, I get that. I felt that too. Or I can recognize that you would feel that way. Thank you for sharing that with me. Or, well, your feelings are stupid and that's silly that you would feel that way, which gives you information on how to navigate the situation further.
Hmm. I really like that, and I'm totally guilty of the not healthy version where you're pointing the finger and just and all it ever does is does the exact opposite.
Hmm.
But for some reason in those moments it's a skill set that it's a well-worn path
Hmm.
of just being like, ooh, because you this thing happened, this circumstance happened, I'm going to be blaming you for
Hmm.
my feelings,
Hmm.
and that is generally fruitless in that. So I want to. You've mentioned a couple things in from your personal experience. When what behaviors often develop in someone after experiencing betrayal?
There are specific symptoms that I work with. So there are different types, I guess. So some of the women, um, actually, if I can back up and just state what I was going to say to you, the reason that you are going there when you say like a well-worn path, it's the way that your nervous system has found calm. There's a dopamine spike of excitement of trying to get her to give you what you want, right? Maybe she will for a moment, that relaxes your nervous system temporarily. Your dopamine drops down below the base of normal, and that feels really yucky. And so you go back and you keep these patterns of unhealthy coping mechanisms over and over again. So when we work with the nervous system responses, the stress responses, I work specifically with women who are married and whose husband have been unfaithful, and they're fighting for their marriage. So the symptoms that the women that I work with are going to be different symptoms than the woman who found out that her husband wasn't faithful and left.
Got it. All right.
Because her response is going to be like the flight. And so she's going to, I don't know that because I didn't do that. I stayed and I tried, right? So when we work with the fight stress response, we're working with hypervigilance and hyperawareness. This looks like, why did he just compliment me? A compliment feels unsafe. What is he hiding on his phone? That always cautious of when is the next shoe going to drop. Okay. The second symptom is a desire to control, where this can be telling you things that you can or can't do that I'm okay with that are going to help me feel better, and trying to control the other person, right? To make me feel okay. Or sometimes it's the control of self, like I will swallow my words, or I will look the other way, or I won't bring something up because I'm afraid to rock the boat. Okay. The third is like fear of vulnerability. So this is where I just imagine like the wall of China around your heart. Like, no way, no how are you going to get in here again? Because I'm really protecting my heart from being hurt again. And so sometimes, even though you can experience like good moments with your husband, or like cognitively, you can kind of see like, wow, he seems that he's doing the work, and maybe he's not going to hurt me again. That wall is going to be like, well, just
Yeah.
remember what happened last time you opened your
It's
heart.
gonna get probably thicker instead
Yep.
of yeah.
Well, and what happens with that one is like, sometimes out of fear of like, oh no, if I don't love him, or if I don't forgive him, or if I don't just move on from this, he's going to move on from me. And so I'm going to jump over the wall, dive back in, and then doggy paddle, drown. Right? Because I don't have the skill set within me to create any sort of a different relationship. I'm still looking at him like, what's he going to do to make me okay? And then I'm just going to build that wall up again. Yeah. 100 by 100 foot wall that no way, no how is he ever going to get past. Right. The the next one would be, let's see, what anger, resentment. And so this can look like, I'm angry at you for what you have done. And even though we can have a really good conversation and I feel like there could be vulnerability there, my anger is going to step in and be like, yeah, but you did this to me. And you kind of just can't forget that, right? Sometimes there's a resentment where like you're having fun with the kids and they love their dad. And I'm over here like, they shouldn't love him. Doesn't he know what he's done to me? Like, I can't be fun. I can't laugh right now. I don't even know how to enjoy time with my kids because all I'm doing is thinking about what he did. And so I resent you for you being okay and me not being okay. But also sometimes the anger can go at yourself for not being able to make a decision to stay or to go, for not being able to open your heart again, for letting it maybe take place over and over again. Okay. And then the last one is what I call reassurance, justification, and validation. And this is where you're ruminating. You can't end the constant thoughts that are going on in your head, trying to piece the puzzle together of what you did and what he did and where they were, how to fix it. You going to him and saying, can you just give me this last detail and I think I'll be okay, but it's temporary. It doesn't really appease anything. Or promise me that you're never going to talk to her again. Like always needing that like safety through his words. And with that sometimes comes like a validation of like, well, I went out and spent $1,000 and I deserved it because he put me through this, right? And so we can harm ourselves even more deeply, or get ourselves into situations that aren't healthy in a way of coping from the stress response specific to that.
Man. How I'm just gonna sit with a couple. I mean, I'm familiar with a few of those reactions. Others are a little bit newer for me to digest. Is there a time frame that women will see you by the time, they've been cheated on in some way? And how long on average have you, I don't know, mapped this where they've been living in this pattern of hypervigilance or anger before they realize, like, I need external help because I
Mm,
don't have the skill set or the know without to really navigate this new territory.
yeah. When I worked in the therapy center, the women who came in for an intake would be put with me right away. And it was really cool to see the benefits of their therapy sessions with the therapists, because they knew they could like hear what their husband was saying and weren't on the defense or weren't using their anger to block what they were saying, right? So when we look at that on the brain level, like when we experience trauma, the limbic brain comes online and it unplugs the higher order thinking brain. And so when we think about like the cognitive understanding of what he did, which I don't believe in like the nitty gritty details personally, like he did what he did. Let's see if we can rebuild. That's my take on it. But women would go through full therapeutic disclosures without having worked or dealt with the trauma or their nervous system. And then all that does is feed their emotions because they're seeing the visuals now even more vivid and racking them to where like, now let's separate. We don't have the skills to move on from this. Now I'm done, right? When that's not what the answer is because there's still such an emotional enmeshment there. So when they could work with me and then go through the therapy, it worked really well for the results that we were able to see within the clients. When I took my business online, it's a little bit different because it's not traditional. And, when you ask Google, what do I do? My husband just cheated. It's like, go to therapy, journal, take hot baths. And it's not known to like, actually, your nervous system is the first thing that has to heal here
Hmm.
in order to get the help, that you need. So, when we look at the stages of infidelity, the first one is shock. So it's like, I can't believe he did this to me. This isn't the man I married. And there's numbness and kind of dissociation, as well as that honeymoon phase of like, well, he was just honest with me. We both want to rebuild. So let's dive back in. Right. That happens and they attend some therapy. And then they're like, I think we're good, except for well worn paths come into play because that's all you know.
Mhm.
And so you get into the second part, the second stage, which is anger and blame and frustration and the hypervigilance and all of the symptoms of trauma that have been there now and have been building. They get louder because we're practicing it. And so that's online. That's usually where I end up working with women who find me there after they've done the books, after they've listened to the podcast, after they've attended the therapy and done everything that they can. And they're like, I still get triggered every time he gets a text message, or
Mm.
if he's at work and he doesn't text me back right away, there's got to be something more. And that's where I come in. But I wish that it was more known that they should start with
Start with that.
that. Yeah. Before they just waste more time and enhance the skills of trauma physiologically in their brain.
All right. So, what is the break down the Empower Her method?
So, my Empower Her method is a 3-step process to rebuilding a relationship after infidelity, or I like to say reviving love, right? Because if you look at a relationship, there's two people there. And if you take what's yours, you're yours. That's all you can control. You can't
Hmm.
control him or what he does. But there's a desire for a revived love, right? And initially, we want to make it work with the man that we're with more than anything. We want that love in our life. So we start with releasing, or I call it calm the chaos, which is a recognition of really getting out of that fight or flight stage and finding that space within your body to breathe for just a moment. Um, you know, the subtitle of my program is Change Your Body, Change Your Breath, Change Your Life. And it's not like from a size 12 to a size 6, it's the internal shift and the internal changes that when our body's in that fight mode, we're so tight and rigid. Like
Mhm.
we don't even recognize how we're clenching or holding or withstanding. And so it's getting into our body on a very compassionate level that also works with our nervous system. So when we go into therapy and we read the books and we listen to podcasts and we shove information, we're overstimulating our nervous
Yeah.
system. We're
Yeah,
actually
that's
doing the
insane.
opposite of what we should
Mhm.
be doing, right? So this is like, it's really hard for us type A people who are like, tell me what to do and I will do it so I can get over this and we can move on.
Mm.
But so it's the opposite. It's try softer. It's just to just get into your body and be okay and find that safety in your body first. So when we can step into that space and calm some of that chaos, then we can start to repair, or I'd say repair because it's not like you're broken. It's just kind of like rebuild new neural pathways that we can start navigating, that are conscious ways that we react in life, where we respond in life, I guess, more like emotional stability, right? So I call it the trauma highway. Right now, you're on the trauma highway, and that well worn path is
Mhm.
like barricaded, and there are cement walls that are, 20 feet tall, and there is no green exit sign that says in 1 mile, you're going to take that exit to be okay, right? So this is all about like initially just taking the steering wheel and being like, there's potholes and tumbleweeds and not an exit there. And you have to start and creating that.
All right.
Right.
So that first little bit seems to be extremely uncomfortable because that's
Mm-hmm.
is as much as you're uncomfortable and hating the well-worn path or this highway,
Yep.
it's because it's familiar.
Yep.
It's known, and so
Mm-hmm.
anything that is unknown to that could be very like
Scary.
scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And our brain tries to reserve energy, and so it takes the well-worn path. Like that's just what it does automatically. It's an autonomous thing, like your microphone sitting right in front of
Mm-hmm.
your. Like your brain is its own entity, and so it's you, capital S self, stepping in and taking control, maybe for the first time in your life, right? So I always say you have to fear staying where you are more than you fear the unknown. And that's what this work is all about.
I'm thinking of this quote. It says, "Love yourself." Oh shoot, why am I gonna think of it now? Like, love yourself where you are, but love yourself enough to not to stay there,
Mm-hmm.
and to just
Mm-hmm.
realize like I don't. This isn't a stagnant place that I have to be.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
uh, man, I can't imagine the difficulty of all the choices that would have to get to that point where you're just like, okay, uh, I don't know. I could just see how scary that could be
Mm-hmm.
for people.
And it's so hard because there are experts in this field who will say it's his job to rebuild trust. He's the one that broke it. He's the one that needs to do it. And so they've spent however many months or years pointing the finger at him and waiting for him to do it. And when all of a sudden, like, wait, it's not about him. This is about me. But I didn't do this. But this wasn't, something that I asked for. And so it's really shifting like this isn't about him at all. It is all about you.
I can see that being initially triggering when people first hear that have been
Oh, I
betrayed.
have comments all the time. Like, why should the woman who, didn't choose this? Of course, it's up to her to do all the healing, blah, 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 like all the time. But what people don't understand is it's a nervous system response, that it's not something that you have to heal because of what you did. It's something you have to heal because of what has been done to you. And if you don't heal it, you replicate those skills. The cells in your body continue to reproduce and you become a walking embodiment of the trauma you've experienced where everything feels like trauma to you. Nothing, even going to the grocery store, feels safe. So it has nothing really. I mean, I know it's so hard. I keep hitting the mic.
You're
I know
okay.
it's so hard to think like, but I didn't do this. I should just have to sit on the sidelines of my life and wait for him to make the changes that he needs to in his life. That's all well and good. And he needs to do that. But if you sit in the space of hypervigilance and mistrust and second guessing, when he's ready for a healthy relationship, you're not going to be ready for it.
Hmm.
You're not going to be able to see it.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to sit with that for a second. So where does the yoga come in then with this?
So this is all of it. So you asked about the Empower method. So the first step is calm the chaos and to release the trauma, right?
Yeah.
We start, I mean, I use yoga therapy, I use neurosomatic tools, I use applied neurology techniques to be able to work with all of the different systems that are being impacted in your body. The vestibular system, the visual system, the autonomic nervous system, like there's so many different systems in your body that have been disrupted by this trauma, that it's not just yoga. And like I could hold you in Warrior One all day long. That's not going to do anything. It's the way that I introduce you to yourself. And it's very gentle, again, going back to that nervous system healing of like, shove it in me. I just want to get over this. And it's gentle. And it's, we say like, your nervous system has to heal in micro doses. It can't handle a lot all at once. And so you have to be very gentle with it. So the way that I walk you through within my Beyond Breath course, which is my signature program, it's one part of your body we're healing, and then the next, and then the next. And so I use all those tools to incorporate as we heal the body from the ground up. Step 2 in the Empower Her method is rebuild. And in this section, it's really about resetting the nervous system and starting to rebuild trust, I guess. Start to trust yourself again. So when we work with the autonomic nervous system specifically, it is detecting for danger or safety 4 to 5 times per second on its own. That's its job. That's its role, right? When you experience trauma, the part of that detects for safety, just imagine it being unplugged from the wall, and then it takes with you the modem of your higher order thinking brain, where you can problem solve, make decisions, clearly comprehend what's going on outside of you and understand what it means. So when we enhance that, like when I say like trusting yourself is a skill, we have to start trusting ourselves first. We have to get that higher order thinking on. It's not about him proving himself worthy. It's not about him checking enough boxes in order for me to be like, oh, magically we're okay. You've checked enough boxes. Let's go for it. Because you have to be able to trust the information that you're being given. And if you're stuck in that trauma space, you're not going to see it. It's still going to feel dangerous. So this is the active steps of like, okay, I feel safe in my body right now. And I feel emotionally safe with him. I'm going to grab his hand. Right? And it's a proactive embodiment of trusting yourself, knowing that at any moment you feel unsafe, you have the power to remove yourself from the situation, to resettle your nervous system, to emotionally regulate so that you can go back into your relationship the way that you need to honor yourself, to respect yourself. Whereas like, I don't feel safe right now, so I'm just going to call an Uber and I'll meet you at home, right? You are responsible for your safety. That's what you need to know. And you can't keep looking at him and saying, you're responsible for my safety. And if you don't do this, then I'm not going to be okay. Right? We're individual creatures who are very capable of doing that for ourselves. Okay.
So how long does these first kind of stages usually take?
Sometimes it really truly differs. I mean, as far as what my modules are, I offer one module a week for 8 weeks. Is the way that I've set it up and tested and researched it. And it usually goes pretty well. Some of the women that I work with have a little bit of a harder time when their husbands aren't responding to their invitations. So this is where
Yeah,
maybe,
give me an example.
so maybe like one of my clients in particular, like she really wanted her marriage to work. And when she was talking to me, like I could tell, and I don't ever say this to her on the phone, I could tell there was a little bit of like abuse and maybe manipulation happening from his end. And so when she's doing the work, she's, you know, inviting a different type of conversation. Like, I'd like to share with you what I'm learning about myself today. And he wouldn't care, which is hurtful, right? Because you
Mm,
just opened yourself in vulnerability. She's okay. She's safe with herself, but it's sometimes it's her reality that makes it harder for her to continue to process that this is about you, that his response is information for you that you need to see. And if you're stuck behind the betrayal fog, you're not going to see it.
okay.
So sometimes just kind of that, like, but I don't want to see that. We want to stay in that denial a little bit longer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got to see me. I want him to see me for who I am. Maybe if I, going back to old patterns, do this with this or this. So, but if it's in that situation, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Um, but truly also the more that she applies the work to her daily life, the more worn that path becomes, and it becomes an easier navigation for her.
Right.
For the women whose husbands are doing the work and have been doing the work, and she's just been in that place of like, not, I don't want to open my heart again. I'm really scared. Sometimes we don't want to see that he is healing, because then that means we do have to open our heart again, and we'd rather not.
Oh, sure.
So, but for her, it's usually a little bit of an easier transition because there's positive reinforcements of acceptance of her invitations to communicate differently or to approach like, a lot of it is communication. It's kind of the bottleneck of everything that we do, is that communication with him. But the communication that we invite is that we come closer together, right? We don't want this mound between us. And so when he's like, I can meet you there, then it's a little bit easier for her to keep moving on with the tools because she's seeing the positive
Mm.
response.
Yeah, I can see that being very motivating and just can potentially speed things along
Hmm.
as you're both in parallel, maybe at different spots,
Hmm.
but at least you guys are working together
Right.
versus only one person's
Yeah.
doing it and the other one doesn't want to see or doesn't want to feel the shame that they might have behind what they've
Hmm.
done, and they want to
Hmm.
hide behind defense mechanisms.
Yeah. And keep you back. Right. And that can happen. I can speak that for myself. Like I, at the end of my last marriage, I had an option to stay back, to be half of the woman that I am in
Mm.
order to maintain the relationship.
Yeah.
But through my healing, I couldn't do that. I had to, as selfish as it felt, choose myself because I wasn't benefiting myself. I wasn't benefiting my kids. I mean, I had ruined or severed most of the relationships I had with the people in my life because the relationship with myself had been severed.
Mm.
So it's again, like it's hard for those women who don't have like the positive reinforcement, but the work that we do allows for them to see the positive wins that they have within themselves. Like when you say, like, I made a lot of mistakes. No, you didn't. How can you make a mistake if you don't know how to handle this situation or what to do with this? Every moment is an opportunity to learn. And the wins that she experiences are those internal wins of like, we create, if you will, like they're called neuro tags, like new post-it notes on our brain that say, look, you can do this. You can use your voice. You can walk through a trigger and not get derailed, right? Like we learn those small things that build those new pathways that become well-worn, that are positive, that are conscious in the way that we want to show up and be in our lives instead of that survival protection place.
That's good. That's good. What so I can tell, with different personality types, the type A being very vigilant and wanting to just, get at
Go for
this. Yeah, get at this.
it.
And then what's the time commitment each day for, these different um sections that you, or is it more of just take it at your own pace?
What we've researched as far as the program is concerned is it's about an hour and a half a week.
Oh.
But the work starts when you press stop, because my definition of healing from infidelity betrayal is learning how to live again. And so you're, in the car and you're practicing the tools. You're grocery shopping, you're making your kids lunches, or you're having a conversation with your husband and you're practicing the neuro tools that I'm giving you all day long. So, like, only an hour and a half to learn the tools to really kind of understand it, but then it's a living that's going to implement them and to embed them into your being.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm very guilty of the consumption,
Uh
but
huh.
then not
Uh
embodying.
huh.
It's
Yep.
like, ooh, I'll get a hit of excitement and say, I've learned something today,
Hmm.
and that's good enough because I get this excitement of
Hmm.
knowledge. But then, and I might share the knowledge, but then to actually put it into practice is a completely different thing.
Yep. Totally.
And then the next day you're moving on to something else, and so that's something I've been thinking a lot about. My wife has brought it up to me many times. She's like, how much of the things that you're consuming are you actually taking action
Hmm.
on?
Yep.
And so then that requires you to at least for me, to slow down and be like, well, what is it that I feel would be most necessary right now for me
Hmm.
to work on,
Hmm.
that would be beneficial, that resonates right now, and maybe not feel so because those other things, as good as they are, could be another distraction.
Just a coping mechanism again, like you said, like, oh, that feels good. It's a dopamine hit.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, I did it, right? And then, like, unless we unless we do practice or embody it, it's just going up, and then that spike is going up and then right back down. We're like, I feel yucky. Oh, let me go learn something new about myself. Oh, I feel yucky. Yeah, and instead of like finding that gentle, like, steady line of dopamine of like, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm consistently okay here. Yeah.
Is there a time frame that you feel like it takes for people to really start to feel different?
I mean, truly, like a day. Sometimes people just like that initial, like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Oh my gosh, I've never tried this before. Wow, I slept last night like a baby. Like, it's usually initial. And of course, like, when we step into, practicing the tools, sometimes it doesn't work out the way we thought it was going to.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like, the wins aren't how other people respond, because they have to be responsible for that. The wins are always going to be like, how did I do this different than I did last time? And that's something my husband and I always talk about when we got married in 2019. I told him, I'm doing this relationship different.
Ooh.
I'm not doing it the same that I've done in the past. And sometimes when we get stuck in our old familiar ruts, I'll call out and be like, wait a minute, are we doing this different? And then we have to start over, like, okay, this is
So like a do-over, like you kind
let's
of call out a
do
do-over.
over.
All right.
Because I'm going back into my defensive place. You're being defensive. Like, I don't want to talk to you, or you can't hold my emotions. Wait, is this old? Let's start over, because we want this marriage to work. We love each other, and we don't want to fall into those same patterns. So, but again, in order to be able to see, is this something I did before? You have to start with exactly where you are to see what it is that you're doing.
Mm, that awareness piece.
Yes, it's everything.
S- All right. So in my relationship, being the betrayer with pornography.
I hate
uh,
that for you, by the
Okay.
way, because that label is such a heavy label. Like, you're not a betrayer.
Okay. What's the new label that I can maybe
Well,
put
I don't
on?
know. I mean, I know that it's labeled betrayal trauma. Like, that's the definition that Jennifer Freud created. And it really actually has to do with, like, that a primary caregiver withdraws that. And there's a betrayal trauma that takes place. So when I think about that, I think about like a child, right? Like,
Mm,
if I were not capable of taking care of myself, then that makes sense, but we're grown individuals. And so I love that it's usually truthfully like it's a self betrayal, and we all experience that. But to label you as the betrayer, like there's something wrong or you're bad, doesn't
Mhm.
feel right for me. Like you can just say like, I'm David and I'm doing the best I can, and I've always done the best I can with what I knew, right? Like that, giving yourself that compassion instead of holding that identity and that
Mm.
title.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
feels
that's
so horrible to
sure.
me. I had a really good friend that did a podcast with a therapist, and they're now divorced, but you know, he was always the betrayer, the betrayer, the betrayer. And I'm like, gosh, that's got to be hard on you to come into the podcast every week, or, to do this every week and be that label, and, like that self hatred and that continual reminder of that. Like, let's move beyond that. Right.
I love that because yeah, I definitely can see how the labels then can become an identity, and then you really aren't moving beyond it. You're
Right.
always just kind of reminding yourself where you used to be,
And you're
which
giving permission for other people to hold you in that space too.
mm, I like that.
Hmm.
All right. So, well, my question was, how can men best support their partner through this process?
Yeah.
Obviously, not to hopefully go back to those things that caused the damage to begin with, but beyond that, what's
Hmm.
something that men could do?
Truthfully, and again, men cheat and women cheat. I want to be very clear with that, because I get messages from men all the time like, my wife is the one that cheated, right? So, in that situation, if you have a sincere desire to reconcile, truthfully, it, work on where those wounds are, because pornography and emotional infidelity and, a massage parlor or getting drunk and having a one night stand, for me, like that's a call for help.
Mm,
It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It's how you've learned to cope with emotion. And so recognizing like, what are those wounds within myself? Where's the hole in my bucket that I can go? I have to be the one to dive down and patch up on my own so that I don't leak my energy or cheat my wife of my whole self. Right. And it's doing your own internal work. Same with her. And as you do your work and she does her work, that is a beautiful relationship where, I can step into my humanness a lot with my husband and be like, I'm struggling. I'll tell you what, being a stepmom is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And when I'm struggling, I can go to him and be like, okay, I'm recognizing that I'm in my head. I'm nitpicking, and I can say where I am. And he can be like, I totally get that. And he, having struggled himself and recognize it within himself, and moving on in his life and bettering himself, we can connect. That's humanness. That's intimacy. That's connection that we want.
mm,
That's what we all yearn for, is that human connection. Not I'm a robot, or I will feed you what you think you need to hear, but I'm not feeling it.
yeah.
It's the relatability that we connect with.
Something that I personally struggle with is I tend to be quite avoidant of conflict
Mm-hmm.
or emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That was what drove me
Mm-hmm.
to certain patterns and behaviors.
Right.
So, in these processes of recognizing these wounds or these patterns that are no longer serving us, uh, uh, I have to remind myself that, to rather than flee or
Mm-hmm.
try and ignore or whatever my
Mm-hmm.
tactics were, that it's only going to get better unless I kind of lean into the
Mm-hmm.
headwinds a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where I'm going to be learning, and still have a long way to go with that because my default tends to revert to old things. But the fact that this potential friction that life is putting on us gives us an opportunity to then work through and solve that initial circumstance to then grow and to actually connect even further.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to remind myself like friction is necessary to move.
Yep.
And I did not know that for a long time.
Mm-hmm. If you think like the least amount of friction is good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Pretend it's all
Yep.
okay. And when things aren't okay, then it's like, I don't know, don't have the skill set, nor
Hmm.
do I want to even be here.
Yep.
And so I need to figure out a way to pacify or numb.
Yep.
And
And
that,
again, going back to like when we can see what's going on inside of your body and the way that your nervous system has been written, if you will, from your own experiences, from your childhood, from relationships in high school, that gives so much compassion for you and what you were experiencing. Like it wasn't a conscious decision that you started doing those things. It soothed your nervous system because that's what it wants. It wants to feel okay. It wants to feel at peace. It doesn't have a mind to think like this is good or this is bad. All your body wants is to feel better,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so just understanding that from the nervous system perspective of like, you did the best you could with the information that you had. You survived maybe through really hard times by coping this way.
Mhm.
Thank you for taking care of me. Now I'm here and I'm going to choose how I want to be able to, you know, move through life, how I want to show up through life, because now I can be aware of that instead of just letting the automatic features of survival take its place.
Yeah. Okay. So have we covered the Empower Her method that you feel like people can kind of get a grasp of what that is?
I think so. The last step was just confidence
Okay.
and it just is this um an inner birth almost of stepping into life that when we experience infidelity, I mean, we question our worth. We question, the other woman, what she had that we didn't have. I talk about walking the tightrope of perfection. Like I obviously wasn't good enough before because he wouldn't have cheated on me, but now I'm not sure who to be. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I need to just be who I think he wants me to be. But again, that's a loss of self. So really working with that integrity piece or that wholeness piece. And I love the definition of integrity because it means whole and undivided. And if your relationship is going to work, you have to be confident in who you are and what you are deserving of. And this isn't anything hoity toity or that I'm deserving of anything more than anybody else. We're all deserving of love. We're all deserving of respect. And if we want that, we have to have the confidence to prove it to ourselves by honoring that here within. So even if he is going to be upset because you didn't have sex with him today because you honored your boundaries, you have to have confidence with that decision. Like, I still love you. I know I can't give that to you because it would be depleting of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't be able to show up for you the way that I want to. So I'm honoring me, and you have to have the confidence to be able to step into that, which can invite, again, through your actions, a healthy relationship. Like, I can see that. All right. I don't want you to have to divide yourself just to make me okay. Right.
Yeah.
So that confidence piece is everything. And what I work with a lot of high achieving women who are very successful. I have, a client who owns her own dental practice and who is a divorce lawyer and who are therapists themselves. So very successful women on the outside, going back to that mask thing we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they're in chaos on the inside and not confident in who they are within their relationship, which can mask very well, but that's exhausting. That requires burnout to have to pretend to be okay in the workplace when you're dying every time you go home. Right. So that integrity piece of like getting your mind on the same plane as your heart, your belief system to match your actions and your words so that you are that whole individual showing up in your relationship. Take it or leave it, Bob. This is who I am. You're showing up. And if he takes it, great, right? And you're taking him, you're choosing him too, because you've chosen yourself. And you can feel that he's choosing you too, because he's chosen himself. Or I'm choosing me. And if you're not going to choose yourself and give me your whole self, we're not going to match. We're going to have a hard time connecting here because I am confident in the respect that I deserve.
Yeah.
I'm confident in the love that I am capable of giving and that I should be receiving.
I'm digesting everything you just said. There's a lot there to digest. So something with people that are listening that maybe have gone through uh, something similar to what we've been talking about, I would love to be able to ask the question, what would be one of the best things that they could do right now that would help them?
hmm Uh, I I mean, I wish that there was like a magical pill that would be like, just do this and it's going to be fine, right? And when we work with the nervous system, everybody's nervous system is a little bit different. And so for me to say like, rub your tongue along the upper palate from the back of your teeth to the back of your throat. It stimulates the vagus nerve, and helps you drop into parasympathetic. That's one thing that you can do, but there are so many different neurosomatic tools that you can do to help to navigate that. But also, that's not enough. You're just
Sure.
telling me that
Yeah.
that's all I have to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's a
really,
band-aid.
as well, and it can be healing, like when you need to self-soothe, you can go back there, to nurture yourself. But truly, the beginning of everything is acknowledgement. Are you happy with where you are? Are you okay that he's still talking to the other woman? Are you, satisfied in the way that you're showing up in your life? And it has to be that first step of acknowledgement of like, I don't even know who I am. I look in the mirror and I have no idea who's looking back. That has to be the first step into this,
Mm.
right? Because without that, there's no commitment behind it. There's no drive or motivation that's going to take you out. If you just wanted a quick fix, there's a whole bunch of tools that you can learn to navigate. But to walk along this path and to truly recover yourself, it has to start with an acknowledgement of where you are, of what you're thinking, of how you're thinking, of how you're eating, of how you're moving, of how you're interacting with your children. And are you okay with that? Right? Do you like that? Do you like that? And then if not, that's where the work can begin.
I love that. How I was going to ask this other question, but you kind of answered it in there because if what's one thing that you hope that people will take away from today's episode?
Hmm.
Is it the awareness piece?
Yeah, more than anything, like I love the idea that there's hope. So many women are like crossing their fingers and their toes and their legs, like hoping that he's gonna comply, hoping that he's gonna, obey her demands when he walks out the door. And there's so much hope in him that he's going to change. And the hope that I offer is that you don't have to live like this, that it's not dependent on anybody else. It is truly within you to shift your life, to transform your reality into something that you didn't even know existed. Like I'm living the same life that I was when I was 19, when I was 28, when I was 33. Like my nails are the same, I mean, obviously, maybe clipped off, right? But like I'm the same, except for I'm different. And it didn't have anything to do with anything externally changing. It had everything to do with me.
That's one thing I've been really impressed by with midlife is you've lived enough time to start to realize, you start asking these questions. Can I continue to live like this?
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth it to me? Do I, and for me, just kind of projecting forward into the direction of like, oh man, I don't think I want to do this
Mm-hmm.
for the next 40 years
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is. And so that in and of itself can be a gift to have that beginning of that awareness, but then to start to shift and realize, okay, yes, I can consume this information. Yes, I can get knowledge, but when am I going to start taking some action?
Mm-hmm. Nobody's coming to save me.
Hmm. Where are people able to find you?
Instagram is amazing. And so I have a healthy community there,
You do.
as Sariah.Bastian. And then, my website, SariahBastian.com, as well. But more than anything, like I, you know, I can talk and I can give advice, but my most important advice would be, let's do the work, right? Commit to your healing, and I will show you how it's done. I'm not going to do it for you. I will show you how it's done. The proven science-backed method of walking out of this chaos, right?
Well, and the fact that you have your own personal story
Totally.
to relate, and that you've embodied, and being able to say like, I am proof. I'm not just kind of teaching a method that I've learned, but I've lived.
I walked through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can complete a survey, get on my calendar. I'm the one on the calls. I talk to every woman who I enroll into my Beyond Breath program, just to make sure that we fit, that you are okay with the goals and the results that I can help you with, that you're willing to do the work that you need to do to get there. And then we get you there. That's really cool.
I'm so glad you could come on
Thank you.
and share this. I know it's a very touchy and sensitive subject for a lot of people, including myself, to admit that, that like, ooh, yeah, I've definitely try not to use the word the mistake,
No.
but definitely done what I've done and what has been the aftermath of that. But through that, there's been actually a lot of beautiful moments that
Absolutely.
wouldn't have been available had we not addressed some of these things. And they're still going on, but it's also, there's that hope too of like, okay, there has been growth, there has been change.
Yeah.
And, where can we continue to pivot a little bit? And this idea of, redoing, recognizing, oh, wow, we're getting back into these old patterns that are very, old.
Toxic.
Yeah. And just, we've outgrown them,
Yep.
really.
Totally.
Let's step into this newer version and be able to, and have that patience of that process.
Totally. I was just going to say that it's not going to be like, okay, this is the new standard. It's little microdoses of healing.
And that's the important thing for me to remember too, is like, this is the ultra marathon, not just a marathon, but the ultra marathon
process.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank
and all that you've shared with us today.
Of course.
And I hope that people might be able to reach out.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.